Hello Year 5 and welcome to Guided Reading. We're going to continue with Alfred Noyes's The Highwayman. So let's read it together first and then we'll continue with some of the questions. As I'm sure you know, a highwayman stops travellers at night and robs them. They're basically a mugger. So with that in mind, we, in Victorian literature particularly, highwaymen were often portrayed as quite romantic and exciting because they saw them as handsome and they were masked and they were mysterious and very always elegantly dressed. Now, although they were secretive, they also risked being captured. So with that in mind, let's continue to read. Part 1. The wind was a torrent of darkness among the gusty trees. The moon was a ghostly galleon tossed upon cloudy seas. The road was a ribbon of moonlight over the purple moor, and the highwayman came riding, riding, riding. The highwayman came riding up to the old inn door. Now, before we continue further, I just wanted to highlight a few things. I don't know if you noticed, but trees and seas rhyme. So we're going to, let's label that A and A because those two words rhyme. And more, and can you find another word that rhymes with more at the end? Yeah, great. Door. They rhyme too. So that's label them B and B. And then riding and riding, although they don't quite rhyme because they're exactly the same word, we're going to label them C and C. Now, we call this AA, B, C, C, B, okay? So that's the rhyming scheme. So when we read it, we've got to make sure that we emphasize these words so that they rhyme, okay? It's really important to the rhythm of the poem. He'd a French cocked hat on his forehead, a bunch of lace at his chin, a coat of claret velvet and breeches of brown doe skin. They fitted with never a wrinkle, his boots were up to the thigh, and he rode with a jewelled twinkle, his pistol butts a twinkle, his rapier hilt a twinkle, under the jewelled sky. Over the cobbles he clattered and clashed in the dark inn yard. He tapped with his whip on the shutters, but all was locked and barred. He whistled a tune to the window, and who should be waiting there but the landlord's black-eyed daughter, Bess, the landlord's daughter, plaiting her dark red love knot into her long black hair. And dark, in the dark old inn-yard, a stable wicket creaked, where Tim the ostler listened. His face was white and peaked. His eyes were hollows of madness. His hair was mouldy hay. But he loved the landlord's daughter, the landlord's red-lipped daughter. Dumb as a dog, he listened, and he heard the robber say. One kiss, my bonny sweetheart. I'm after a prize tonight, but I shall be back with the yellow gold before the morning light. Yet, if they press me sharply and hurry me through the day, then look for me by moonlight, watch for me by moonlight. I'll come to thee by moonlight, though hell should bar the way. He rose upright in the stirrups. He scarce could reach her hand, but she loosened her hair in the casement. His face burnt like a brand as the black cascade of perfume came tumbling over his breast, and he kissed its waves in the moonlight. Oh, sweet black waves in the moonlight, then tugged at the rein in the moonlight and galloped away to the west. Part 2. He did not come in the dawning. He did not come at noon. And out of the tawny sunset, before the rise of the moon, when the road was a gypsy ribbon, looping the purple moor, a redcoat troop came marching, marching, marching. King George's men came marching up to the old inn door. They said no word to the landlord, they drank his ale instead. But they gagged his daughter and bound her to the foot of her narrow bed. Two of them knelt at her casement with muskets at their side. Muskets were like long guns. There was death at every window, and hell at one dark window, for Bess could see through her casement the road that he would ride. The casement is a bit like a window. They had tied her up to attention with many a sniggering jest. They had bound a musket beside her with the muzzle beneath her breast. Now, keep good watch. And they kissed her. They heard the doomed man say, "Look for me by moonlight, watch for me by moonlight. I'll come to thee by moonlight, though hell should bar the way." She twisted her hands behind her, but all the knots held good. She writhed her hands till her fingers were wet with sweat or blood. They stretched and strained in the darkness, and the hours crawled by like years, till now, on the stroke of midnight, cold on the stroke of midnight, the tip of one finger touched it. The trigger, at least, was hers. I wonder what she's doing here. The tip of one finger touched it. She strove no more for the rest. Up she stood to attention with the muzzle beneath her breast. She would not risk their hearing. She would not strive again, for the road lay bare in the moonlight, blank bare in the moonlight, and the blood of her veins in the moonlight throbbed to her love's refrain. I wonder how she's feeling here. What words might tell you that? Clot, 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 clot. Had they heard it? The horse hooves ringing clear. Clot, 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 clot in the distance. Were they deaf? Were they deaf that they did not hear? Down the ribbon of moonlight, over the brow of the hill, the highwayman came riding, riding, riding. The redcoats looked to their priming. She stood up, straight and still. Clot, clot in the frosty silence, clot, clot in the echoing night. Nearer he came and nearer. Her face was like a light. Her eyes grew wide for a moment. She drew one last deep breath. Then her finger moved in the moonlight. Her musket shattered the moonlight, shattered her breast in the moonlight, and warned him with her death. He turned. He spurred to the west. He did not know who stood, bowed with her head over the musket, drenched with her own blood. Not till the dawn he heard it, and her face grew grey to hear. Now Bess, the landlord's daughter, the landlord's black-eyed daughter, he watched for her love in the moonlight and died in the darkness there. Back he spurred like a madman, shrieking a curse to the sky, with the white road smoking behind him and his rapier brandished high. Blood red were his spurs in the golden noon. Wine red was his velvet coat when they shot him down on the highway, down like a dog on the highway, and he lay in his blood on the highway with a bunch of lace at his throat. So I would like you please to rewind the video and start from the beginning and put me on mute, and then I would like you to read the whole poem aloud also. And then when you've finished, we're going to go and take a look at some of the questions. So pause it now and return when you've finished. Okay, so let's take a look at some of these questions. Let's take a look at the first one. What does the phrase, "the wind was a torrent of darkness," tell us about the sitting? Now, when they give us a quote, we need to look at the language because that gives us tiny little clues. So, the wind, so we know that it was quite windy. Torrent means in this case lots and lots of it. And darkness. Now, if it's dark, what time of day do you think it would be? Yeah, I would say that it was probably nighttime. And if there's lots of wind, what kind of weather is that? Yeah, I agree, quite stormy. So actually, I would say that it was a dark, stormy night. Okay. I'd now like you to take a look at questions 2, 3 and 4 and answer them looking very carefully at the language. Stanza is another word for verse. So if you take a look at this is one stanza here and this is another stanza. Okay, it's just another word for verse, like a tiny little paragraph. Pause, and when you've finished, unpause, and we'll go through the answers. Okay, great. So you've answered this. Number 1 is it was a stormy night. So only light, the only light was the moon. So the only light was the moon. And it was quite stormy. And the moon shining down on the clouds. The moon was a ghostly galleon tossed upon cloudy seas. Galleon is a kind of ship. So the moon shining down on clouds. Number 2, look at the second stanza. What does the phrase jeweled sky suggest about the sky that night? It suggests that the sky, that the stars were twinkling in the sky. So that the stars were twinkling. Number 3. Over the cobbles he clattered and clashed in the dark inn yard. Which word suggests that he is moving quickly? Now, it says word. So am I looking for several words or a phrase or just one word? Yeah, absolutely. It suggests just one word. And the word is clattered. Now, it actually means quite noisy, but I would imagine that if he was moving quite quietly, he wouldn't be making that amount of noise. So, clattered. Next, who was listening to the highwayman Bess? So I'm going to underline my keywords and I'm looking for who. And what were they doing? They were listening. And we know that the two people he was listening to was the highwayman and Bess. Okay, now I've underlined who. So my answer, is it going to be a place? No. Is it going to be an adjective? No. Is it going to be a time? No. If the question starts with who, then I know that it's got to be a person. So I'm looking for a person, or perhaps people. If it is a place or an adjective or a time, I know that that can't be the right answer. So I'm going to look And I'm going to skim and scan my text. Okay, so I'm going to skim and scan for those keywords, perhaps listening or perhaps Bess. Okay, I can see Bess here. Now I'm going to read around. Don't forget, my question is, who was listening to Bess and the Highwayman? He whistled a tune to the window, and who should be waiting there but the landlord's black-eyed daughter, Bess the landlord's daughter, plaiting a red love knot into her long black hair. That doesn't answer the question, so I'm going to keep going. I'm going to see if I can see any more of those keywords. Oh, I have listened here, so I'm going to read around it. And in the dark old inn yard, a stable wicket creaked where Tim the ostler listened. Ah, so he's listening here. His face was white and peaked. He loved the landlord's daughter. Dumb as a dog, he listened and he heard the robber say. So here we know that Bess is there and the robber, the highwayman. So it's actually Tim the ostler who is listening. So let me see, have I answered the question? Who was listening to the highwayman and Bess? Tim the ostler. Okay, that's great. I would now like you to answer the rest of the questions. For question 8, remember, verse is the same as stanza, so you need to count along. Evidence means what? Yes, that you need to quote. You need to take words from the text and put that in your answer. Okay? Pause the video, and when you've finished, unpause it, and we'll go through the answers. Great. Okay, so the answer for number 6 is, what does the phrase hair like mouldy hay tell us about the ostler's appearance? It tells us that he is dishevelled. And another word for that is untidy. Okay? Because hair is quite messy. Hay is quite messy, and mouldy means that it's a little bit rotten almost. When does the highwayman plan to return to Bess? Before the morning. Which word from the 6th verse shows that the highwayman was travelling quickly? So we're going to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Here. You can see galloped away to the west. That tells us that he is travelling quickly. So it's running quite fast. Okay, galloped. Okay, and find evidence from the poem to support each of these impressions. Give yourself a tick if you have one of these. Now it's just worth 2 marks, so you need 1 for the first one and then 1 for the second one. Tim is jealous of the highwayman, but he loved the landlord's daughter. So if you have that, you can get 1 point. And 2, his eyes were hollows of madness. Shows that he's jealous. Okay, so that's, if you have one of those, give yourself a tick. Now we're looking for evidence to show that Bess loves the highwayman. 1. Plaiting a dark red love knot into her long black hair. And the second one, but she loosened her hair, in the casement. Sorry, my writing is terrible. Okay, so give yourself marks and tally that up. Good job. I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye.